Hello, it is another Tuesday, which means it's time for another in real life video. Also, apologies, this one's a little bit later. We went out to watch The Odyssey. We didn't get to see it in IMAX. It was actually sold out, but we really got to see it and really enjoyed it. At least I really enjoyed it a whole bunch. Regardless, that is neither here nor there. What is here is a question submitted from a gentle viewer just like you. You too can submit your own questions by using the comments below if you want. It helps a whole bunch if when you do this, you include a question mark in your question because it lets me auto sort things, which makes it a whole lot simpler for adding to our big list. I've got a big list of them. Also as well, in addition to answering these questions and all of that, or covering more topical things as they arise, we also do silly, stupid ranking videos every now and then. And if you want something ranked that's not already been requested, feel free to do so. You can also do it in a very similar fashion, and even though it's not necessarily a question, it's more of a request, still perhaps include a question mark when you're requesting a ranking video for the exact same reason. Just helps me sort it out. Anyway, this week's comes to us from a gentle viewer whose username should be somewhere in the lower third of your screen right about now. And they write in asking, did Disco Elysium cause you to research political structures? A very peculiar question. One, and a question which I would imagine perhaps did happen to other people, right? You know what? Let's take a step back. For those who do not know, Disco Elysium is a CRPG. We did a playthrough on this channel, and it is very, very narrative-centric. It is very narrative-focused. It's very good. I very much liked it a whole lot. It's the playthrough itself is one of my favorite ones I've ever done on the channel. It literally brought me to tears multiple times. So I'm kind of glad we did it back before we did Facecam, because I don't think it would be a very pretty sight. But you know, it is what it is. It was very emotional. It is also very politically charged and very like, politically focused. It's quite a left-wing game. And it's one which I enjoyed its political takes quite a bit. That said, as I sort of alluded to there at the very beginning, it didn't really have me research my own politics or like political structures, as it were, or sort of refine my own. I would say that I was already sort of where I am from the get-go of playing that game. And maybe it's a case in point that maybe you only play Disco Elysium if you're already kind of like entrenched, so to speak. I would be very curious if that happened to anyone else to like further refine or like discover their own politics, right? I don't know. I could see it being the case, but just as well, like I said, I feel like the target demographic of someone who plays Disco Elysium, you're already at least a decently politically invested or interested individual. You know, I would imagine that's the case. For me, however, despite saying that, Disco Elysium did have a bit of an effect on me in that regard. Mind you, the politicking of it, like I said, although I like a lot of its takes, and I think it conveys it very well. I think at its core, what I really enjoyed about the game was how soulful it is, right? The writing is so emotionally like charged. It evokes so much emotion from you just by reading it, or these days listening to it being read to you. It's absolutely fantastic. The prose is like beyond belief in how it's written. It's just beautiful to read. It's such it's a page turner, although it's a video game, you know, it's a lot of text. but it is absolutely a page turner, making you want to press forward and find out what's going on, find some greater truth or meaning to something that is just surfaced or whatever. Trying very difficult, trying very hard here to avoid speaking on anything too specific about the game, because I know that there may well be a good chunk of folks who see this and perhaps, and I encourage it, are inspired to play the game, or at the very least, watch someone else, like myself, play the game, and absolutely go ahead and do that, I would say. But yeah, a lot of the most memorable moments from the game are either combining its politicking with that same sort of like emotionally charged soulfulness, right? It has such a great well of humanity within it, right? It feels so rich and full of like the human experience, you know? And in some ways it dovetails into the politics, as you might expect, because such things happen. But as well, there's other like anecdotes and little stories in there where politicking is only like ancillary, right? Like it occurs in the background, just as it does in real life. It occurs in the background and has an impact on different people in that world, and thus you see like some outcomes, right? You see how different people have interfaced and have been impacted by various political structures, various political bodies and factions within the game. And those smaller experiences I found like extremely like compelling, extremely emotionally evocative. It was just exceptional at that. Anyway, to get back on topic, to narrow it down, what it did do for me was, I think, refine the way in which I speak about politics. At the very least, and right, and this is very much right. I don't know if there's a good way to talk about this without seeming like masturbatory. But I think playing Disco Elysium did make me funnier when it came to talking about politics. I feel like pre-Disco Elysium, I tried to be very careful, right? Still very deliberate, but I don't think I quite had clued in on very good ways, aside from like older stuff that I had seen, like I had watched the Colbert Show way back in the day during its heyday. So I had kind of that basis to work with, but I feel like Disco Elysium really like opened my eyes to more creative and just funnier ways of speaking about politics and sort of interfacing with it, specifically like on YouTube, talking into a microphone during a playthrough. I feel like it made me quite a bit better at being able to like articulate my thoughts on it, specifically in a funny way, right? I feel like it was very good at like bringing that out of me and sort of like giving me ideas and seeing like how they do it, because although it's also a very like deeply tragic and sad world, not to be very redundant here, but it evokes so much sadness in this world. But as I remember remarking so much in the playthrough itself, it being such a melancholy filled game also presents this unique opportunity, which they're so good at seizing with the writing in that game. But it presents such a unique opportunity to afford some levity that maybe otherwise wouldn't work elsewhere, right? Some of the comedic timing and jokes in the game otherwise wouldn't work in a more cheery setting or even a more satirical one. But because it gets so down to like, it feels so raw at times and so, I don't know, just so fucking sad. It helps make the funnier parts even funnier, right? I don't think some of its comedic moments hit quite as well in a different game with a different tone. I feel like the two work in tandem so well together. It's kind of a feat that I think ought be studied, right? The way in which the game leverages both like moments of sadness and moments of levity, I think is absolutely impeccable. But yeah, that's it for me. Is that it very much helped me be able to articulate my own thoughts in like a more palatable and funny way, I feel, than I had before getting into it, you know, just and almost pure. No, not purely, but in no small part, thanks to like just the incredible prose, right? The way in which it's the game itself sort of puts forward ideas and like analysis as well. It's very good about, and like, you know, like I said, without without repeating myself too much, it's just very good at working in comedy with it. You know, it's very good about that. And I think that's the main thing that I took away from it. I hate to disappoint and say that I was already kind of locked in on it, but I feel like that's part of the like I said at the start, I think that's part of the reality of having an interest in the game to want to pull the trigger on it, right? And want to like get interested in playing the game. I feel like I hear no shortage of people who are like, yeah, Disco Elysium, I heard it's really good. Right, I have a friend who really highly recommended it from me. It's a friend who I really respect their opinions on games. I've seen like so many video essays just laying on praise and stuff about this game. And I feel like you hear about so many people who are sitting at that precipice. They got the game in their Steam library or whatever the heck, and they just haven't pulled the trigger. I feel like what gets someone to hear about the game and then want to play it is that they're already kind of like, I don't know, politically activated. You know, it's sort of a case of like almost preaching to the choir, unfortunately. You know, I feel like if you're already in, you're in, you know. The big benefit, like I said, though, is I think, and I would imagine that I'm not the only individual who has felt this way, but I would imagine that this happens to a lot of folks, perhaps even people watching this very video, is that it got you more comfortable with talking politics, and specifically like ways in which you could be funny and kind of hopeful and like maybe less melodramatic when it's not necessary or whatever, right? Knowing when to like throw in some levity, I think also helps a bunch in just conveying your own politics, right? I feel like a lot of politics, at least in the United States, and I don't know, I get the sense that it's broadly elsewhere as well. A lot of it is, for better or worse, tied to optics, thus being able to convey an idea in like a relatable and like funny way is sometimes extremely valuable, right? I feel like we're sort of entering this, or we've already entered this era wherein just rolling up with a bunch of facts and logic in the marketplace of ideas, in the moment you win like a debate, you win an argument or something, but it doesn't fully convince someone. You know, it doesn't convince someone of something quite as well as being more charismatic about, being funny about it, living being sort of the living proof of what you believe in, right? Sort of walking the walk, as it were. I feel like that's way more convincing to bring people around, or to even just activate people. I feel like that's something that we perhaps undervalue less, but we definitely still do undervalue it. Not as much as we did, but I feel like having a sort of this appeal that's more rhetorical in nature, and is, like I said, is easier to swallow and easier to parse and understand, and feels in some ways relatable or in some ways funny. I feel like that's way more valuable in this day and age than just like coming down and slamming down facts and statistics, percentages, all sorts of stuff like that. I think there's value in that, but I feel like if you're trying to convince someone of something, it's not as useful as of a metric as you would like, or as useful of a vector of approach as you would like. That's the sort of stuff that is only really interesting to people who are already locked in, right? For discussing with other people who share your worldview. I think it's predominantly useful there if you're like in the background, like talking shop or whatever, right? And you're like thinking of like, well, you know, this could be better in such and such way or whatever, you know? But if you well and truly want to like sway opinion and move the needle, as it were, I think it's rhetoric, right? It's having more elucidating rhetoric is far superior for like moving the needle. All right. That ought to do it for this one. Like I said, apologies, we were out watching this movie, which I very much enjoyed. That's also why this is late and why this video is a little bit on the shorter side. All right. That ought to do it for this one. Like I said, feel free to submit in the comments below if you want some sort of question or request for ranking. Until next time, please take care of each other.